Hi everyone. Hi Royal, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Today we have a great speaker with us. It's Royal, a founder at Code Parrot AI. He's going to tell us a little bit more about this tool created for developers to help you have your work faster for front-end developers. Am I right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Welcome, Royal. It's all yours, the stage.
All right. Thanks, Pia. Thanks for the introduction. And also thanks, Henry, for organizing this talk. I'm really excited about it. I've heard like you're some of the best candidates to join the workforce in Latin America in this year. So I'm really excited about this as I think you're going to shape the developer ecosystem in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm excited to hear from you. I want to know what you think about our tool. What do you think about using AI in general? And anything else that you feel like, right? So let me get started with the talk. And like I can also see the comment section. So if you have any questions in the middle, feel free to ask them. I can take pauses in the middle. I want this to be more of an interactive session rather than like a monologue for myself, right? So let's get started. So, but first a bit about myself. So I'm the founder of this company called CodeParrot AI. We are building a copilot for front-end development. Basically, it's a tool to how to speed up your workflow as a front-end developer. Before this, I've worked as a machine learning scientist. I've worked as a software developer, and I was most recently a CTO of a edtech startup in India called Mastery. And I've also seen the edtech space very closely. I've worked with companies which are doing somewhat similar to what Henry is doing in India. So I appreciate this a lot. And I can understand some of the challenges, some of the opportunities as well. And I've been told a large portion of the audience is from Argentina today. So I put that snippet at the end. I really like the World Cup final, the penalty shootouts. And but I was hoping that Brazil would win. But anyway. All right. So before we get started with um, how to improve your workflow, which tools are the best tools, I wanted to take a short detour on why we are having this talk and why now. Right? So, like ever since I've joined the workforce, since my career started, AI has been like a hyped term ever since. Like AI has been supposed to take our jobs for a long, long time now, but I haven't seen like lots of mainstream application. So when I joined the workforce for the first time, I was a machine learning scientist and at a voice cloning startup. So we were trying to clone voice from one person to another and have some like legal use cases of it. But after trying for a couple of years, it didn't work at all. So like I was one of those people who thought that AI is not going to be worth it. But then in the last couple of years, my thought process has also changed. And like one major reason or one major innovation driving that fact is a technology called LLMs or large language models. So you might have heard of ChatGPT or even LLMs about LLMs. So first we are going to like understand what they are a little bit, not in depth, but a little bit, and then go into like the tools and how to use them. Right. So so far, any questions? Just let me know, Pia, in general.
Yeah, yeah. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. So first, look at what is AI, like the entire landscape, right? So AI has been around for more than 30, 40 years in the form that we know about. Right? First, any what so let's start. What is an AI? Right? It's any software system that tries to replicate human behavior. So the first versions of it started with like the chess programs back in 1980s and 1990s. So what they would do, they would figure out what if the program picks a move, what would be the move of the human, and then try to figure out 10 steps and 20 steps in advance. And for each possible scenario, it will give a score to it. And then basis that, figure out what is the optimal step. So that is like a rule-based engine that someone really smart created, and they even outsmarted, I think, Gary Kasparov, if I'm not wrong, like the best human player back in, I think, 97. So that was the origin of the entire AI movement. So that was like the first phase or first set of systems.
Mhm.
And then the second ones were ML or machine learning. The major differences were that AI systems before that were rule based, like somebody had to create them. But ML systems were more learned from the data. Like the first sort of real applications of these were in like weather domain. So what you had was a lot of past historical data, like what is the humidity level, wind level, sunlight level on a particular day, and then whether it rained on that particular day or not, right? So you take all these factors or these features, as they're called in the machine learning world,
Mhm.
and then you try to learn, the algorithm tries to learn which factors are important by how much. So you have these four features, each of them is given a weight, and then you figure out which ones are important to figure out whether it's going to rain or not. So that was like the second set of um, phase in the entire AI world called the ML, machine learning.
Okay.
The third, the third major innovation which came is called DL or deep learning. Now, if you look at the machine learning algorithms, you still have to tell the algorithm what features or what factors to look at. For
Mhm.
example, I talked about the humidity or the sunlight level, right? But sometimes that's not possible. So let's take an example. You want to build like a classifier for animals. You have cats, dogs, sparrows, crows, and snakes. Let's say. Right? Now you have thousands or millions of such images, and you want to train an algorithm which tells you what exactly is that. Now, how are you going to build a feature set out of this? How are you going to tell what are the factors you should look at? You just have images, right?
Mhm.
And that is where, for a long, long time, we were stuck until deep learning came into the picture. So, deep learning is basically a strategy to replicate how humans learn. So, what
Okay.
it does is it creates a machine learning model which is like huge, much bigger than what we had previously, and it tries to learn what features to look at,
Mm.
and then figure out what features are important by how much. So going back to the example of millions of images, right? So first it will look at the images and try to figure out lower level details from it, like this is a line, this is a circle, this is something else, like shapes that will it will first figure that out. Then it will figure out, okay, if these lines are in this particular alignment, it must be a leg. Then it
Okay.
will try to figure out that hey, since it's a leg, it can't be a snake, right? And then finally it will figure out a combination of these, like this is legs, this is eyes, this has a beak. So based on these different factors, it will finally create a deep learning model, which is a classifier, which tells you what animal it is. Right? So these are like some of the major phases of machine learning algorithms that we have seen in the past sort of 30 years. And in the last couple of years, a subset of these deep learning models called large language models have really emerged um, and gotten really, really good. So now let's talk about those in a bit more depth. So large language models are a subset of these deep learning models. They behave very similarly, but they are tuned for the human language. So what they've done is they've scraped the entire public internet. So Stack Overflow, all the public websites, GitHub repositories, and everything, right? And just given it to the model. And what it has learned basically is that how language work, how we communicate to each other. So if I'm saying a sentence to you, what is the sentence structure? What do words mean?
Okay.
So, for example, if I meet 15 people and I every time I at the start I say hello, it knows that it's an introductory thing, right? So that is how it has gained knowledge about the human language, and are now even getting better than humans at it. And the core piece of technology which power the large language models, it's called transformers. So if you have heard about chat gpt,
Yeah.
the T stands for transformers, right? And just as a slight snippet, the GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformers. What that means is generative means like those deep learning models which generate something as opposed to discriminate. So the example I took of classifying the cats, dogs, snakes, and all, that is an example of discriminative model. The GPT ones which generate an answer for you, they are called generative. Pre-trained means that even before we train it on a particular task, it has trained itself on the entire internet, right? So that's what GPT stands for. So now that we like have a basic understanding of where we are in this phase of AI, right? I think now it makes more sense why suddenly there are a lot of these tools which are talking about AI and productivity. Main reason is they have a basic or a very advanced knowledge of the human language. Now, what I wanted to do was basically do sort of like a coding exercise. We'll build a full stack application. I'll share my screen. And this is also a Code Parrot demo, and it's running locally. So if something goes wrong, this will not happen in production. Please bear with me for the moment. And yeah, let's get started. So I'll share my screen. Pia, can you let me know if you can see when you can see that?
Yeah. So I'm going to remove this actual screen and try to
Yeah.
share it again.
Okay. Mm,
Yep. Yeah. Here you go.
okay. All right. And this works here as well, right? Like I have my code editor open. I hope you
Yeah.
can see this.
We can
All
see
right.
it.
All right, cool. So I'll first give you a short tour of what the existing project is. It's a Next.js app. If you're not familiar with Next.js, it's just like a Express backend and React frontend. It's basically a full way to build full stack apps. And I have a demo, sort of basic boilerplate project on it right now. It's there on my local host. It's like the boilerplate which comes with Next.js, right? Now, what we are going to do is basically, I have this nice little Figma file from the community. It's basically a SaaS app for employees of a particular company. So you can see which employees are there and some details about them. Right? So what we are going to do is take this design file and try to create it using AI and see whether that can help us speed up our workflow. So what I've done is installed this Code Parrot plugin, and I have submitted this particular Figma file um, to it. So you can see it right over here that we have this information, right? So now let's get started. So first thing that we are going to do is basically try to create this header section from it. And I'll select it from here. I'll submit it. It will take a few seconds to generate the output and blah, blah, blah. I have chosen React, Tailwind, TypeScript as my technology. So now what you can see is basically it has seen this screenshot. Behind the scenes, there are some properties from Figma. Um, like if you can see the width, colors, all those set of things that are also sent to the model. And basis that, it has been able to generate some code. So let me get started with this. Okay, so I'll create this header component. Try to do it quickly. Mm, Initial one might take some time, but the next ones are going to be fast, I promise. And I also need to add some colors. I hope most of you are familiar with Tailwind. If not, this is a great library that you should be using for CSS. Okay, missing something. I hope it works. Save it once. And let's see. Yes. So as you can see, it has generated something. It's not looking very good, but that's because a lot of the images are missing. So as you can see, yes, some images are not there. I've already saved some of them. So I'll change it over here. You can see this. Again, I have to add some more things, like some more images, which the AI will not know about. All right, you can see the search icon, you can see my image. I'll also add this is the settings dot switching and applications. All right, cool. So we have a good starting point for us. Like this is the header that we created. Normally, like I'm not very proficient at CSS, so I would take a long time for this.
Okay.
But this is the power of using a tool like this. Let me take one more quick example on how to use it. I've sent some more details. It will again do the same thing, give out the code. I can copy paste it and so on and so forth. Another sort of thing which will happen when you use any of these AI tools is sometimes you'll have to prompt and get better results. So let's see that you want to create this particular component. It has given out the code for you, but maybe you are not happy with it. Maybe you're not happy with the color, or you want that on mobile screens it should behave in a particular way. So you'll have to prompt it out further to get what you want. So let's take this example on mobile. The buttons should be invisible. Let's see what it does. So if you can see, like to make the buttons invisible on mobile, you can add these classes, and basically it understood what to do, and it has added some of these things, some of these classes in Tailwind to get what we want. Another sort of thing which I wanted to show you was, let's say we want to build this site nav bar. Create this, and meanwhile, let me also start creating the file for it. You can also see that it generates a nice looking code for it. It creates the proper prop structure, the TypeScript nuances. It understands pretty well. So it's created the sidebar. Put this and import it in my main file. Let's see how it works out. So as you can see, it has worked out to somewhat degree. Like it has created this structure, but this is not at all on the side. Now what do we do? Right. Now that is a very common thing that will happen when you use any of these AI tools. You want to achieve something, but it's not getting the hang of it. So then what you can do is you can share this information with the AI and then ask it to refactor it or edit it. So basically, I've chosen this particular file, and then I can talk to it in the human language, saying sidebar is supposed to be on left, everything else on right. Let's see what it does. Saying I can do this other thing. Let's try that. And now it works, right? So
There you go.
there you go. I was worried it's not going to work, but it does more often than not. Right? So this is how you need to start using AI. Like it's not going to be perfect every time because it doesn't know what's there in your mind. You have to specify what you want. And similarly, you can go on building the rest of it. I'll show you one more functionality and then I think we can wrap this section.
Yeah, they have a
So
question here. I don't know if you want to answer it
yeah,
right away, and they are asking if the AI will pass everything to code, from Fignet to code, and then it's just like copy paste. Like it's that easy as you have just shown.
it is. It is. So this is like a random Figma file I had, right? Like, and you can take any other thing and try it out for yourself. You can change it over here and give it a shot. And I think like that's the best way to go about it. Try for yourself and try to make it work for you because there's a bit of a learning curve with any AI agent because you need to understand like over time what prompts to give it to. It has some nuances, like it'll sometimes work. It might not work always. Like maybe 1 out of 10 times it will not work. So you need to figure out what to say to it to make it work, and that you get the hang of it pretty soon. But it takes some sort of
Yeah.
hours just sitting with it.
And the important thing is that what I'm looking here is that it will save you a lot of time as a developer. Like
Yeah,
you can be doing more things, and while you like learn how to like arrange the AI and you take that time, you will be
yeah,
really grateful. Well, I have a question. I know the answer, but I want the the audience to know about this. How do they access to the plugin so they can use the Code Parrot, this tool for?
sure.
It's
So
important
basically,
information.
this is a VS Code plugin. You can go into the extension sort of space and type Code Parrot,
Yeah,
and you'll be able to see it over here. You can install it directly from here,
perfect.
and it'll take a few seconds to get set up.
Great. Okay, I have another. Okay, they're asking if the image of the design that you just shared with CodeParrot is a simple screenshot like a JPG or a PNG.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
The images that you just like uploaded to the code parrot is like a JPG, a PNG, or it doesn't matter what kind of image.
It doesn't matter, and like AI in general is very flexible. So right now I'm using SVGs
Uh-huh.
because they are more flexible compared to PNGs, but you can use any format and it usually works right out of the gate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Right. So yeah, I'll continue if there are no like further questions.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Cool. So now let's try to create something a bit more complex,
Mhm.
which is like a table. So let's try with this. Actually, this is pretty huge. What we can do instead maybe is like take a. Actually, that's another good point. What we can do is sometimes the amount of information you need to pass the AI is going to be a lot. Like
Okay.
for example, if you take this particular image, it's going to say that this Figma component is too large because in the background, there's just too much to share. Now, what do
Okay.
you do in these scenarios? There's an alternative way which you can use. So let's go to um, this. Actually, we can just use this as well. You can take like an image of it. Now, if I take this image, it will be stored on my local machine. And then I have this nice little option of using a screenshot of a component. Then I'll open this and then I'll try to send this. Let's see what happens. Now it's able to like understand what it is, and it'll start creating. Now, like the difference between using a screenshot and using like the whole Figma component is basically screenshot is much thinner. It's much shorter. In Figma, there is lots of background information, as I mentioned, like how is each element sort of aligned to each other, what are the colors and everything. But images are much thinner, and AI is most of the time able to understand from that as well. So let's look at this code. It created user list, it has created some days, it has created this table, which is pretty nice. And yeah, actually, I think this code is going to work. But what I wanted to show you further apart from this is you can use AI and like Code Parrot not just for building UI, you can do much more than that. Now, this table will be getting data from some backend. So we also want to write the backend for it. So let's try this and then Next.js API called slash get employees, and it should fetch data from MongoDB database. And let's also add that the table fetches information from Next.js API, blah, blah, blah. Instruct it as much as possible, like write verbose, write in detail, write the API and fetching logic. And it's okay if your sentences are not grammatically correct, they are not coherent, but it should make sense. So, for example, there are three subparts to it. Table fetches information from a Next.js API, right? The API and also the fetching logic. And API should fetch data from MongoDB database. So let's see how well it does. So it has started on the right track. It has they're saying that first you should define the schema in your MongoDB logic, then write the Next.js API, which also looks correct. The database connection also looks correct, and also like the front end logic for it also seems nice. So basically, the core point of this is that what you want to do is create one component and also iterate over it to get the best out of it. For example, get the responsiveness right. If you
Mhm.
want it look too different on mobile, you want to also add the functionality like the backend logic to it. And everything that you can ask a human programmer to do, ask the AI to do it first for you. Look at the code and then think whether you should write it on your own from scratch or whether copy pasting it will make more sense. And in my experience, 9 out of 10 times you'll find it writing it this way is much faster. For example, now I find it very hard to go back to my previous way and writing everything from scratch. It has made me much more lazier, but I think that is how the industry is moving forward. Okay. Cool. So this is pretty much, I think, like a good overview of how you can use CodePad, and some of these other tools also work in somewhat similar way. Cool. So now I'll jump back a bit and I'll
Here.
stop sharing for a moment. Yeah.
I have a question, Royal. What challenges did you have to overcome when you started Code Parrot's platform? Like, yeah, if you could tell us a little bit more about it.
Right. So building a AI tool is pretty fascinating, but it's also sometimes you wanna like scratch your face because it sometimes doesn't work, right? So there's a
Okay.
lot of hard work that goes into improving the accuracy. So
Yeah.
if I talk about it in terms of phases, like the first phase is if you want to build an AI application, just call OpenAI or Llama or all these APIs in the background, and they'll do a decent job of it. But when you want to improve upon the results, so you want to capture as much as relevant information which you can pass to these models. So a big challenge for us was we have these Figma files or design files, right? How do
Mhm.
we extract the right information from them and
Yeah.
pass it to the model? And that's lots of hit and trials. So we spent months figuring out like what is the information, trying it out in the field, going to the developers, asking how the results were, and then iterating back and again. And that's a continuous process for us. And I think most of the AI tools work very similarly.
Great. Thank you.
Right now, I'll I think we can also look at some of the most popular LLM tools. I'll give you a quick overview of each of them, like 2 minutes, and what are the strengths of each, how we can utilize them better, and if you and you should think like based on your workflow, which one suits you. Okay. So let's first start with GitHub Copilot. So let me again present my screen. So Pia, can you just remove the slides and I'll share my screen again?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So yeah, I think now it's again visible.
Yeah.
So let's start with GitHub Copilot. So this is already installed in my IDE. You can see it over here. Now the way you would want to use it, let's say we have some file. Let me see. I want to write a function add two numbers. So it will already like start prompting me like how you should use it. Let's see it again. Function subtract two numbers. See again, like it gave me an answer. Like let's now try something bit more difficult. Check list is equal. Let's say nice. It's give me a nice looking function. If two lengths are not equal, then check everything else. So it's able to do that. Let's try one more example. Now a bit more complex. Upload file in chunks. Basically, it's a large file.
Mhm.
Now we want to upload it like piecewise. and it has been able to give me a decent looking function for it. Now, this is one thing that you should always remember when you're working with AI, that sometimes it might give you a correct looking solution, but it might not be always correct. So, for example, what I wanted was a function which can basically take a file, slice it into small chunks, and then basically upload all of them. It has taken one chunk and it has uploaded it, but that is not what I wanted. So when you are working with AI, keep an eye on the solution because it might not be right, but you can get it to work for you. So again, in GitHub Copilot, you get a nice chart window along with it. You can select it and you can say it doesn't upload all the chunks. Let's see, able to figure it out. See, only reads and processes the first chunk. So now it will give you a better function for it, which will do what you want it to. So the AI solution is sometimes not correct, and that is the duty of the developer to figure it out. Few other functionalities or things that you want to use it for, you can use it to, let's say, write tests. So if you do /test, it will create the unit test for you for the selected items. If you ask it to, let's say, explain, it will explain that bit of code snippet to you. So this is pretty useful, pretty handy. I use GitHub Copilot all the time, and I think you should also give it a try. So that's the first tool which I wanted to talk about. The second one is sort of a variation on it, and it's called cursor.dev. So it's basically like a IDE editor built specifically for AI. So I have this cursor.dev open. It looks pretty similar to VS Code. Now, the difference over here is that the AI workflow is inbuilt in it. So instead of, let's say, having a chat, I can do Command K and and this window will open and I can say, explain this button to me. It will start generating the response, and the user interface is somewhat nicer. You can do Command Y to accept, Command N to reject. You don't have to do a lot of copy pasting. There are some advanced controls that you have with this. So if you do Command L, and you can specify what really you want from the system. So for example, you're saying you can say I'm doing this particular task, I'm refactoring. So convert every JavaScript file to TypeScript, and it will start doing that. Sometimes what also happens is that you want some of your code to not be sent to AI. So what you can do is you can configure these ignore files like your environment variables files or some files where you have like secrets, like you don't want AI to read them. So you have these advanced controls in cursor.dev. But in terms of functionality, it's very similar to GitHub Copilot, and I think it's a matter of preference. I prefer Copilot over this, but I know people who like Cursor as well. So this is the second sort of tool. Both of them have very like same focus in terms of how they want to help the developer, but different ways of doing this. A different tool which helps in a different part of your developer lifecycle is called swim.io. And this is the web interface for that. I have the trial version. And what you can do is basically automate documentation for you. So let's look at this particular feature. It will take your PR and create a documentation for it. Let me click on it. They've given some sample sort of PRs. Let's see how it works. So this basic PR is there on GitHub, and it reads the code changes what are being done and creates a documentation for that. And I think it does a good job in most of the situations, but you don't want these to be like on auto mode. You don't want to just these tools to keep on adding documentation. You want to use these tools to create a version for you and then add, edit, and modify them as you go along. And this is a pretty nice tool. There are some other alternatives for automated documentation as well, which you should check out. And the third tool which I want to talk about was CodeParrot. It's our own tool, and I think I've given a demo for it. And what you'll see going in future is that you will see more purpose-built tools. So, for example, we are building something for front-end developers. There will be tools. There are already tools which are there for data engineering. There are tools for DevOps teams separately, and so on. Right? So you'll start seeing more of these tools coming about. Cool. I think I'll just share my slides back. We have gone through Copilot. Codium is another alternative to GitHub Copilot. It is very, very similar, works the same way. Some languages, GitHub Copilot is better. Very few languages, Codium is better, but both of them are like good to get started. Swim.io, CodeParrot. Right? So I think like these are some of the main tools which are being used heavily in the industry now.
Yeah.
And going forward, there will be a lot more which will come. Right?
I have a question for you, Royal. What challenges do you think a developer could encounter when using this kind of tool you just show us, like on a daily basis? Like,
right. Yeah. So that's the word of caution. And so there are like there are few things that you should be careful about. Like first one is it looks correct, but it is not, right? So as I showed you in the example of uploading the file, on the surface it looked correct, but when you go deeper into it, it is not, right? So you should never or leave it on auto mode. You should check what the code is. You should think whether it has any bugs and then only use it. I think that's the number one advice. A lot of times I've seen there's a meme going around that earlier you would spend 1 hour in writing, 1 hour in debugging. Now you would spend 5 minutes in writing and 2 hours in debugging because you don't know which part has given you an error. Right? So you want to be careful about the code that you are using. The second thing is that the tools which you are using should be secure and trustworthy. So, for example, you will have some private information stored in your code base, like the URL of your database, the passwords, the credentials, things like that. Now, when these tools read your code base, they also transfer some of the code on their servers to generate a good response, and that is a safe thing to do. A lot of non-AI tools also do this, but you want to be sure that first they don't store your code permanently. They should, once they are done with your request, they should delete the code. And you want this because in case they get compromised at some point of time, you don't want your code to also leak along with them. And so I think that's the number one thing that you should look in any of these LLM tools. And another thing to know that sometimes the code that these LLM tools provide can be insecure. Like in my personal opinion, it's still better than what a human developer would do on an average, because we also write a lot of insecure code. But AIs also have the potential to do that because they're learning from us only, right? So again, the first point, go through the code. Don't only look for correctness, also look at the security aspect of it. Are they saving the passwords on a local disk? All the good practices that you need to learn, you should also look at in the code that is generated for you. Okay? So I think these are like some of the things that you should worry about. And I also wanted to talk a bit about like going forward, what we're expecting will happen. Right? I think we're still in the very infancy stage of these tools. I think they'll become more and more prevalent, and there are like good reasons also. Like first, I think adoption is increasing, and people are getting more familiar with it. The tools are getting better and more and fit better in your workflow. There's a lot of corporate incentive for it as well. Like in India, there are a lot of IT services companies that are like huge, right? And they are taking lots of effort, lots of time to train the developers they have with these tools so that they can be more productive, right? So what you can expect that this in the next 5 years is going to be as common as using a Stack Overflow or a Google for some of your queries. So this is not something which is hype. I think this is a trend that you should do. Second is I think these tools will also get cheaper over time. Like every year, the cost of running these tools is coming down by a factor of 5. So it costs like the cost was $1 earlier, now it's like 20 cents. And this trend is expected to continue over time. Right? So the cost of using these tools for the end users will also come down and become much more feasible for everyone to use them. And third, I think like there will be more purpose-built tools, as I mentioned, like some for documentation, some for front-end development, some for reviewing PRs, and so on and so forth. So you want to like figure out a workflow, a set of tools that work well for you over time. Okay? So that's pretty much that's pretty much what I had to talk about. I'm
I
happy
have a
to
couple
take
of
it.
questions for you, Royal.
Yeah.
So first of all, great, everything you just show us, like it's like blows my mind that you can like put an image and it could like tell like send you the code as easy. We know that you have to like read whatever the AI it's throwing at us, but it's like a great improvement for times, and you just what you just said. But what kind of impact do you think like your technology and similar tools will have on the future for web development and for user interface designers? Like, what do you see in that?
So I think like two major things. First, like the baseline for products will get raised. So right now, for example, if you see some of the websites, they're okay, they're not great, right?
Mhm.
But because creating really good websites, really good web apps will be easier, the baseline of products will improve. So you as a developer also need to like start thinking about different aspects from it of your web app, not just like the code part. For example, how performant it is, how well is it working on mobile devices, all these different factors which earlier you couldn't do because of time constraints, now you would be able to, and every other developer would also be able to, right? So like the baseline of what is expected from you will increase, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is that right now, especially in web development, every like 6 months there's a new technology. There was React, there's now Remix and Next.js and so on, right?
Mhm.
And most of the time of developers would go in learning about these technologies, how to use them, and by the time they get comfortable with it, a new one comes around,
I
right?
know.
So in web development, there are a lot of people are generalists that they know lots of these technology, but the experts are lesser. So if I ask anyone, can you improve the performance of this React app? Probably a lot of people won't be able to do it well. Now, what these AI tools give you is a lot of your time should go into learning the depth of a technology rather than like creating the boilerplate code which the AI tools can do for you. So you want to go deeper, you want to understand the core principles more because rest of the stuff can be done by AI as well more over time.
That's great. That's great news what you just told us. I have a question regarding like security and privacy. Like when we are working with designs and codes, security and privacy are crucial. So, what measures have you put in place to protect your users' projects?
Right. So there are like the first thing, as I mentioned, the most important thing is that you don't want to store the user's code and the data at any point of time. If you store them, there's no matter how many precautions you take, there's always a chance, right? Like there are always hackers, there are always attackers who are going to damage you. So first thing is never storing the code and the data of the users beyond the request. Like for example, whenever I click on submit, I get the response and then we just delete the code that we have for the user. So that's one. The second thing is that all the downstream dependencies that we are using, for example, we are using OpenAI models, we are using Llama models from Facebook, all of them have their own privacy settings in the sense that if you turn them on, they will not use this data for training, they will also not store this data. So all of these should be turned on. So whatever precautions you are taking, all your downstream dependencies should also be taking. I think that's the main thing that we are doing.
Great. Perfect. And a question I have for you is that given the AI learns with the data available, how do you ensure your system stays up like to date with the latest trends in web and design?
So I think like a lot of the heavy lifting is already done
Mhm.
by the tools that you're going to use. So for example, when we are building CodeParrot, whenever a new version of React or any of these popular tools come about, we make sure we index that, we go through their documentation, we go through all of the resources available online on Stack Overflow and everything else, and read them for you so that the AI knowledge is updated. So the good thing is that you don't have to do much for the tools to be updated for you.
That's great. So last question, saying that we're like getting to our time frame. Um, Looking ahead, like now where you're standing right now in Code Barrett, what new features do you have in mind for your platform? How do you see the role of AI evolving further in the field of web development?
So, like one exciting feature that we are going to add, like one is right now you can take any screenshot, you can take any Figma file, but sometimes what happens is you have a picture in your mind, like what
Mhm.
you want to build, but you don't have any screenshot or like a Figma file to go with. So
Yeah.
what we are launching is something called a draw to code. So basically, you can draw it on a canvas
Yeah.
and just send it to AI, and it will create that code for you. So I'm pretty excited about that feature to get released soon.
Well, that's really great. So Royal, thank you a lot for this talk. I personally am not a developer, but when I just saw like everything you showed, it really blew my mind. I think it's a great tool for all developers, and the other tools that you just show us are great for our students and graduates to see, to learn a little bit more about what it's being used on the ecosystem. So thank you a lot for your time, for sharing with us like or your expertise, and we hope we have you next time for another talk. Okay.
Thanks to you as well, and thanks everyone for their time. It was nice
So
giving this talk.
great. Thank you, and have a nice end of day. Bye.
Bye.